Get ready to plunge into the electrifying world of tech news with the Next Tech Check podcast. Hosted by SmartTech Research's Mark Vena and NextCurve's Leonard Lee. This podcast offers bold insights, controversial debates, and monitors the pulse of innovation. It's the only podcast committed to keeping what's next in tech in check.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Vena, CEO and Principal Analyst at SmartTech Research. And this is Leonard Lee, Founder and Executive Analyst at NextCurve. Welcome to the Next Tech Check podcast. Today is Friday, March 8th, 2024. Wonderful afternoon here in San Jose, California. Good afternoon, Leonard. How is my buddy here in San Diego? How's life?
Oh, doing okay. A little bit under the weather. I think I got something in Barcelona and brought it back. But
oh, really? Ooh.
I'm just dealing with it. Yeah. Hopefully I'll be
ladies
better.
and gentlemen, that's the reason why these podcasts are great, so I don't catch anything.
That's the good thing about remote. Yes, but you're gonna have to deal with my gravelly voice.
You do sound like Brenda Vaccaro. By the way, you don't even know who Brenda Vaccaro is. She was an actress from the 70s that had a real rough voice.
Just don't make me laugh.
No. Well, let's jump into things because there's a lot more to talk about today. I was at HP Amplify earlier this week. It's their big channel event that they do every year for their partners. About 1,500 of their partners show up. You know, between all the HP personnel that comes around, there's probably more than 2,000 people at the event. And Leonard, as I was telling you off camera before we began the podcast, what was interesting to me was the first 24 hours, I was kind of questioning, why the heck did I come out here? Because it was a who's who from an executive interview standpoint. They had interviews, on stage interviews with Pat Gelsinger was interviewed by Enrique Lores, who's the CEO of HP. They've had Cristiano was there, Cristiano from Qualcomm, Sundar Pichai from good old Alphabet. He was actually virtual, but he was there. Satya from Microsoft. It was the 1927 New York Yankees lineup of tech stars, but they were all speaking at a very high level, 40,000 foot level. Yeah, HP is an important partner, and we think AI is going to light up the world. And there was really no new news broken. So that evening, I kind of left. I was saying, I wonder what day 2 is going to be, and I'm not real thrilled. Then day 2 starts, and that was led off by an interview with the irrepressible Jensen Huang from NVIDIA. Came out with his leather jacket. I wonder if that leather jacket's going to end up in the Smithsonian someday. But anyway,
one leather jacket. I think he has a whole closet full, and I want
probably
one.
He probably, you know what? He probably does. But he comes out, does this really great interview with Enrique. He does a really good job of framing the AI opportunity for the partners that were in the audience. I mean, I think he was the best spokesperson, frankly, that HP has. Go out and buy workstations for AI digital content creation on, powered by NVIDIA silicon. And so that was it was encouraging. But the person who I thought did a tremendous job, who I know him, I'm impressed with him every time I see him present, was Alex Cho, who's the president of HP's Personal System Group. And he did what I thought was one of the best tour de force presentations on, here's a brand new lineup of HP client devices, the workstation devices, laptops, all powered by Intel and AMD AI processors. But more specifically, what I really haven't heard from a lot of executives in the PC front, a very erudite, there's an SAT word, presentation of really wide, here are the usage models that on a business level, not consumer, because this was Amplify as an enterprise show, of the real tangible examples of the reason why you want to have an AI chip on a local fashion. And there's obviously advantages around security. There's advantages around confidentiality. There's latency advantages. I think, in all fairness, it was a 45-minute presentation, and I think HP is going to have to do even more work on the messaging front to really get those usage models out. But I was incredibly impressed.
Or some of the examples, because we hear about this all the time. yeah, sure. There's some interesting concepts and ideas, but what are the use cases?
Well, I mean, they've kind of bucketized, what the AI play is for them. Like, for example, and again, this is not a mainstream category, but AI digital content creation on their workstations. There are substantial advantages and efficiencies, productivity advantages of running that stuff locally with AI chips. And they showed a number of different applications. It was Blackmagic and a number of other
Yeah, yeah,
software
yeah.
that when you have an AI powered device, from a rendering standpoint, from a simulation standpoint, you get really tangible advantages. Now, again, I think a lot of the client folks are going to have to do a much better job when you start to get into the consumer categories. And I didn't hear a lot about that.
Sure.
I did see one interesting example. It's not shipping yet, but they showed an interesting piece of innovation from HP on the printing side, where essentially it could use AI to extract content from a PDF, from a web page. For example, they made the statement to us, and the demo is pretty cool. Now it's not shipping yet, but and by the way, this is agnostic to the printer, so you don't need an HP printer. This could work with any type of device that can view web content. And they made this claim. I have no way of validating this, but apparently the most well searched on category of content are recipes. I didn't know that. I can't validate whether that's true or not, but apparently recipes are a big deal. And when someone searches on a recipe, it invariably pulls up like a 27-page web article that it's very difficult to extract that information out. And using a text box, an AI class text box, you could simply type, show me the recipe, and it will lift it out of the web page content and put it on a one pager. And you could do things like, for example, here's a big long 12 pages of web content. I want you to replace certain words with these words, or search for this content, and it condenses everything. Now, do I think someone's going to go out and buy an AI PC simply because that? The answer is no. But the reality is, it was a very practical use of AI technology on the printer side. So there's I'm going to write about this. I don't want to spill the beans on everything, so I want to keep a little bit of this kind of. But I was absolutely blown away by, and it was really Alex. And it's not to say that the messages themselves were important, but you and I have seen presentations like this all the time, and there's a world of difference when you get an executive that comes up and not only can articulate things in a very clear and digestible way, but someone who's passionate, who's likable. He didn't talk down. He had also had to do the, I think, the very complex thing of, he's talking in front of 1,500 partners. He's trying to give them, here's a reason why you need to get on the AI train, because your customers are going to want this technology for these reasons.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was impressed. And, it's a lesson for me that when I go see a movie or read a book where I'm not impressed with the first few chapters, I have to wait to see the whole movie before I make a judgment. So kudos to the HP team for a great event.
Cool. Yeah.
So that was interesting. But you were let me bring this up right away here. You were at MWC on your 13th vacation to Barcelona this year. And before you got typhoid, I hope it wasn't typhoid. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you saw that were relevant at Mobile World Congress.
Oh, geez. I was there for 6 days, hit the ground running on Saturday, and then ended my week on my MWC on Thursday, the end of day Thursday. So it was just like packed. The schedule was packed the whole time. But I mean, there was so much to see, and I was exposed to so many things, engaged with no less than like 30 companies, and frankly, didn't have a lot of time to roam around as I had planned to. But it was just a really huge event this year, almost back to pre-pandemic form. There was about 101,000 according to GSMA, 101,000 attendees. So a lot more crowd than it was last year, and last year was a pretty intense event. And this year's theme was something called what was it, Future First. And I thought that was, you would think, given some of the ground realities of the telco industry right now, up and down the stack, you would learn something. And number one, from last year, in my report on MWC 2023, I had stated the telco industry has a tech digestion problem, meaning, there was so much hype around so many of the technologies in telecoms, whether it's 5G, it's
5G, 5G,
6G,
5G.
metaverse, or
Mm.
Open RAN. Operators don't have an appetite for this stuff anymore. And then, with private networks, there was a whole hype last year about it being the savior of the telecoms vendor, and that didn't pan out. And coming into this year, I thought, well, why not have a focus on now? Why not recognize where the operator is and meet them where they're at? Kind of like meet the customer where they're at. The thing that Amazon loves to say, right? And oftentimes does, or people argue that they do. But no, let's think about the future first, which I think is just incredibly short-sighted for an
Mhm.
industry that really is in not a great situation. But then also in the keynote continue to emphasize, hey, look, data volumes or demand is going up and traffic is going up and your revenues are staying flat. It's like, look, knock it off. Help the operators. And I just didn't see that focus, and a lot of it just
That's
was
interesting.
due to this pivot toward generative AI.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I did see at MWC was this: is a lot of companies that were fronting generative AI, but most of it was in like early phases of product development. There's nothing really mature. Efforts to put it into the network and have it orchestrate things and do all this autonomous stuff, we're not even close. But there is a bright spot. And the excitement around generative AI really shined a light on some of the good non-generative AI stuff that's been happening. It's there's a lot of great stuff there, but unfortunately, when we talk about things like the the RAN intelligent controller, or the RIC, this is supposed to be like sort of the home for these AI automations like X apps and R apps, right?
Mhm. Right.
Right now, there's, even though people like to, talk about all these Open RAN deployments, they're advanced deployments where you see RICs or real time, the RAN intelligent controller deployed, and X and R apps being deployed. You don't see a lot of it, right? At least we're in the early phases of that. So getting this basic AI stuff down, ML, deep learning, that a lot of great engineers have been working on for a long time. Getting that in place, you need that in place first before you start thinking about generative AI, even if
Mhm.
as a code generator or anything, right? Observability, all these things, foundational capabilities, absolutely important. Guess what? A lot of that is now stuff. Technologies that have already been there for a long time that we've been talking about, but have not been applied yet because there's a digestion issue. And
Right.
yeah, I just,
No, I
think
think
it's
what you're
a
saying is
fun-
aptly said. I mean, I think it's a very powerful point you're making. Why that just doesn't apply to what you saw at MWC. I think the technology industry in general, the companies don't have a lot of patience. They deploy a technology, they expect it's going to light the world on fire, and then they're off to the next thing. And they haven't given
right.
a current level of technology time to grow and get a bit of momentum behind it. So what you're telling me is not doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
The question is the operators, which is such an important part of the equation in the mobile connectivity space, that's a group you don't want to alienate. I mean, that's a group that's critical to growth.
Well, they are they are the core of the industry now. There are analyst friends of mine that'll say, well, there are going to be new generations of, let's say, neutral host players, and let's call them neo operators, network operators. Well, okay, that's fine, but they're still operators. They still have to deal with the same type of infrastructure plays. Maybe they do an MVNO type play or variation thereof, but somebody still has to manage, deploy, manage the infrastructure. And this is the thing, and I think is a thread of thought that's really done a disservice to the telco industry, is that software, it's all about software. Actually, it's not. Hardware just ends up being really important, whether it's like an Open RAN, where the accelerator, the architecture, where does, let's say, low-fi versus hi-fi, where does that reside? Do they both reside on the antenna, on the the DU or the CU? Where do these workloads reside in order to be able to realize a competitive RAN solution, Open RAN solution? These types of things actually depend heavily and are influenced heavily by hardware, and silicon. And so, software doesn't solve everything. It'll only allow you to do what the hardware allows you to do, right? In whatever kind of system deployment you're talking about. And so, these are like the things that I'm talking about are these slow realizations that are actually factoring into how certain tech themes are now evolving. Like I'm pretty well known for coining this term, the Open RAN squid game. Well, guess what? It's basically on, and the second phase of it is that, players like Nokia and Ericsson, which who are players that are often alienated by the Open RAN community, are actually coming to the table with stuff that will make Open RAN competitive versus Huawei, where Huawei is not constrained about, and maybe ZTE as well, the Chinese players, they're still delivering very performant, if not leading, systems to the market. Yeah, Open RAN, in the past few years hasn't been able to do that, no matter what people say.
Right.
So, anyways, in short, a lot of really cool stuff. I'm writing a report myself on this. It's just so much stuff. I'm trying to figure out how to synthesize all of it. But I have 16 takeaways, man. It's like crazy. I couldn't, and that's after like trying to compress everything. And
that's why they pay you the big bucks, Leonard, is to make that decision. What those 16 issues are. But before we move to the last topic, I do want to get your reaction because it's MWC related. Qualcomm is a client company that we obviously work quite closely with. They announced this Fast Connect 7900 technology at the event. I really think it's a pretty big deal because, frankly, it solves a real problem, and that's the whole idea of using AI for what I call digital organization, being able to go into your home and the devices connect very intelligently based on your prior usage. So a very simplistic example would be, I've got my headphones on and it switches intelligently from your workstation to your phone to maybe some other device. The state of that today is horrendous. Anybody who has an Apple AirPods Max, like myself, know that it's horrendous. Even Apple has not done a good job with it. And it just, because it doesn't use AI, it kind of guesses, based on proximity, how to switch on and off. And this Fast Connect technology has ultra wideband for precision location management. It supports Wi-Fi 7. It supports the latest iteration of Bluetooth, which is the big three hitters, frankly, from a connectivity standpoint. And I can't wait to see devices that have this capability. But the whole notion of, hey, when I come from my office to my car to my home to my work home office, and the display remembers the configuration you have. So display management, I mean, I think you and I have that same problem that, you're spending 10 minutes when you dock your computer, what location was my display in based on other displays I might have in my workstation setup. But I really think it could be a very exciting thing. So I don't know if you have any comments about that when you get a chance to see a demo of it.
I got a preview of all this stuff. It's definitely cool. It's a great step in enabling, let's call it multi-axis convergence off of a device, which is key. But I thought the one X80, announcing the X80, that was the thing that didn't get a lot of fanfare. It should have, because I want to just remind everybody, the modem is super important, because it's not just about the network. If your UE isn't able to support the next, set of features for 5G, and we're moving into 5G Advanced, then the operators can't get benefit from their network investments. And the fact that nobody talked about X80, they didn't even talk about 5G that much, is a travesty.
The bloom is
only good thing is
off the 5G roads.
Leave that to the researchers and some smart people who can actually guide them in a better direction. But not talking about 5G now, and just, is just like, hello. Are you guys really in sync with what's going on?
That's crazy, given the last couple of Mobile World Congresses that you seem to feel that 5G almost took a back position, which shocks me.
Well, it got subverted by 6G. So anyway,
what did I just say a few minutes ago? Move on. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on.
So I have an excuse for being grumpy.
Well, don't be grumpy about this last topic, because this is a topic actually we haven't talked a lot about, and that is the state of streaming video. And I'll just open this up because I do cover this category quite a bit. And, everybody tends to focus on Netflix and Hulu and some of the other big players that you see on the slide that kind of give you an indication of the health of the industry. And, let's face it. I mean, the industry right now, it's very crowded. It's a very crowded space. Subscriber growth has been challenging for a number of different companies. Netflix, from a business model standpoint, Netflix has kind of, they've embraced an advertisement-based model for the lowest echelon, which was a big change for them. A lot of analysts believe they couldn't make that pivot, but they did, frankly. And so kudos to Netflix for pulling that off. So they've been actually able to add some subscribers, and although entities like Sling has had problems, they've been shedding subscribers. And the other thing that's kind of an interesting part of this space is that, a lot of these streaming entities, they were always touted over the last 5 years or so as this is the new Hollywood, and because they produce content. Netflix produces their own content in long form movies. Hulu does this. Amazon does this. But guess what? Those are very expensive to produce. And the interesting thing, and Netflix has kind of really now kind of reinvented themselves around this, is taking old content. And the best example of this is the show Suits, the show with Meghan Markle, that was on the air for I think it was on the air for 4 or 5 years. I think 5 people watched it while it was on the air. It comes to Netflix, and all of a sudden it becomes one of the top 10 mostly highly viewed shows on Netflix. And there's a number of shows like that. And those streaming sites love that, because that content, all they're doing is it's a licensing deal. There's no production costs associated with it. So it's interesting how it's kind of what old is new, kind of a dynamic. But it's a very interesting space. And, but right now it's very crowded. And, you talk about cut the cord. You're increasingly seeing not companies, but consumers saying, I'm subscribing to 6 or 7 of these services. Do I have enough time to watch all the different content? In many cases, there's overlapping content. The worst feeling you can possibly get is when you pay for a movie to watch it and you found out, oh my God, if I had just looked up it on Hulu, I could have watched it for free. That's the killer feeling that a lot of people have gone through, because discovery of content is sometimes not that great.
I think
What do you think?
No, I think there's an overload. And I think the pendulum is swinging toward premium content, meaning good content, not a bunch of junk content, filler content, right? It's just, there's just too much stuff, right?
Yeah.
And but one of the things I think is really interesting is you're seeing a lot of these. I mean, yeah, traditionally HBO, Showtime, they had sports, the boxing and certain documentaries, but now you're seeing like Netflix now taking a really earnest look at sports, right? And we already see that with Apple TV Plus, which basically struck a deal with the Major League Soccer franchise, and they're starting to expand. Now they have MLB. Who knows? They may even. I think there's NBA as well as they'll probably deal with ESPN, right?
Well, so, Peacock. They broadcast one of the NFL playoff games on. You had to have access to Peacock, and now I'm not. It's a fascinating discussion, Leonard, because some people view things like the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl as sacrosanct. You would never pay for that. I'm predicting that within 5 years, you will have to pay to watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah, or at least some variation of it, and that's where I think Apple probably has the edge on everyone because of spatial content.
Yeah,
the ability to produce it, view it in a high quality way.
Yes,
and augmented by augmented reality. I saw a PGA.
Everybody, this is Leonard. This is Leonard's shameless plug for the Apple Vision Pro. But go ahead.
Right here. No. But it's a reality because we're seeing a lot of. But then it's also other streaming services. Seeing the writing on the wall that they need to get into sports. Right. It's going to be important content for their portfolio going forward. But it's also, in my view, going to be a race for this immersive stuff because we want to forward think here what's happening, right? The problem with what the Vision Pro has done is it's basically creating a platform for experiencing sports in a way different way. And so I think that's probably going to be the next phase of the streaming industry evolution is going toward these immersive formats. So it's going to be interesting to see one way or the other, right? Because in the future you won't need a Vision Pro to view this type of stuff. You'll probably be able to watch it on a 3D screen or what have you, or even on your iPhone, right? Or your Android phone or your iPad or your Android tablet, whatever. But I think they're going to see the writing on the wall that you got to get into this because those immersive experiences they're fantastic. They are very, very different.
No, I agree with you.
Paying to watch the Super Bowl, you might pay to experience that.
Yeah, no, I think that was exactly the point I was going to make, is that the free content, like watching the Super Bowl, let's just use as an example, may be the conventional way you can watch a broadcast today in 1080 or HD or 4K. But if you want a spatial viewing experience of the Super Bowl, which could be a completely different nut where you feel like you're in the huddle, that may be the play. Well, you're going to have to pay for that, whether vis-a-vis a device or some type of other hardware mechanism so you can consume that content. Sure. Oh, I could see that very easily. Every once in a while, and you do make a good point. That's I'm impressed with
occasionally. Same with you.
Well, let's do it and end it there because we've been going about 30 minutes, and I hate to go north of that. But again, Leonard, thanks for participating in today's podcast. For our viewing and listening audience, thanks for making the Next Tech Check podcast part of your day or commute. Please make sure that you hit the like and subscribe buttons at the end of today's podcast, or use these convenient on-screen QR codes to connect with us. You can also follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at the handles below. Thanks again, Leonard, and have a great weekend.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.